Section 84 of Reviews by Oscar Wilde. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reviews by Oscar Wilde, edited by Robert Ross. Section 84. Mr. William Morris's Last Book. Pall Mall Gazette, March 2, 1889. Mr. Morris's last book is a piece of pure art workmanship from beginning to end, and the very remoteness of its style from the common language and ordinary interests of our day gives the whole story a strange beauty and an unfamiliar charm. It is written in blended prose and verse, like the medieval cantafable, and tells the tale of the House of the Wolfings in its struggles against the legionaries of Rome then advancing into northern Germany. It is a kind of saga, and the language in which the folk epic, as we may call it, is set forth recalls the antique dignity and directness of our English tongue 4 centuries ago. From an artistic point of view, it may be described as an attempt to return by a self-conscious effort to the conditions of an earlier and a fresher age. Attempts of this kind are not uncommon in the history of art. From some such feeling came the pre-Raphaelite movement of our own day, and the archaistic movement of later Greek sculpture. When the result is beautiful, the method is justified, and no shrill insistence upon a supposed necessity for absolute modernity of form can prevail against the value of work that has the incomparable excellence of style. Certainly, Mr. Morris's work possesses this excellence. His fine harmonies and rich cadences create in the reader that spirit by which alone can its own spirit be interpreted, awake in him something of the temper of romance, and, by taking him out of his own age, place him in a truer and more vital relation to the great masterpieces of all time. It is a bad thing for an age to be always looking in art for its own reflection. It is well that, now and then, we are given work that is nobly imaginative in its method and purely artistic in its aim. As we read Mr. Morris's story, with its fine alternations of verse and prose, its decorative and descriptive beauties, its wonderful handling of romantic and adventurous themes, we cannot but feel that we are as far removed from the ignoble fiction as we are from the ignoble facts of our own day. We breathe a purer air, and have dreams of a time when life had a kind of poetical quality of its own, and was simple and stately and complete. The tragic interest of the House of the Wolfings centers round the figure of Theodulf, the great hero of the tribe. The goddess who loves him gives him, as he goes to battle against the Romans, a magical hauberk, on which rests this strange fate, that he who wears it shall save his own life and destroy the life of his land. Theodulf, finding out this secret, brings the hauberk back to the Wood Sun, as she is called, and chooses death for himself rather than the ruin of his cause, and so the story ends. But Mr. Morris has always preferred romance to tragedy, and set the development of action above the concentration of passion. His story is like some splendid old tapestry crowded with stately images, and enriched with delicate and delightful detail. The impression it leaves on us is not of a single central figure dominating the whole, but rather of a magnificent design to which everything is subordinated, and by which everything becomes of enduring import. It is the whole presentation of the primitive life that really fascinates. What in other hands would have been mere archaeology is here transformed by quick artistic instinct and made wonderful for us, and human and full of high interest. The ancient world seems to have come to life again for our pleasure. Of a work so large and so coherent, completed with no less perfection than it is conceived, it is difficult by mere quotation to give any adequate idea. This, however, may serve as an example of its narrative power. The passage describes the visit of Theodulf to the Wood Sun. The moonlight lay in a great flood on the grass without, and the dew was falling in the coldest hour of the night, and the earth smelled sweetly. The whole habitation was asleep now, and there was no sound to be known as the sound of any creature, save that from the distant meadow came the lowing of a cow that had lost her calf, and that a white owl was flitting about near the eaves of the roof with her wild cry that sounded like the mocking of merriment now silent. Theodulf turned toward the wood, and walked steadily through the scattered hazel trees, and thereby into the thick of the beech trees, whose boles grew smooth and silver-gray, high and close set. And so on and on he went as one going by a well-known path, though there was no path, till all the moonlight was quenched under the close roof of the beech leaves, though yet for all the darkness no man could go there and not feel that the roof was green above him. Still he went on, in spite of the darkness, till at last there was a glimmer before him, that grew greater till he came unto a small woodlawn whereon the turf grew again, though the grass was but thin, because little sunlight got to it, so close and thick were the tall trees round about it. Not looked Theodulf either at the heavens above or the trees, as he strode from off the husk-strewn floor of the beech wood on to the scanty grass of the lawn, but his eyes looked straight before him at that which was amidmost of the lawn, and little wonder was that, for there on a stone chair sat a woman exceeding fair, clad in glittering raiment, her hair lying as pale in the moonlight on the grey stone as the barley acres in the August night before the reaping hook goes in amongst them. She sat there as though she were awaiting someone, and he made no stop nor stay, but went straight up to her, and took her in his arms, and kissed her mouth and her eyes, and she him again, and then he sat himself down beside her. As an example of the beauty of the verse, we would take this from the Song of the Wood-Sun. It at least shows how perfectly the poetry harmonizes with the prose, and how natural the transition is from the one to the other. In many a stead Doom dwelleth, nor sleepeth day nor night. The rim of the bowl she kisseth, and beareth the chambering light. When the kings of men wend happy to the bride-bed from the board, it is little to say that she wend at the edge of the grinded sword. When about the house half builded she hangeth many a day, the ship from the strand she shoveth, and on his wonted way by the mountain hunter fareth, where his foot ne'er failed before. She is where the high bank crumbles at last on the river's shore. The mower's skith she wetteth, and lulleth the shepherd to sleep, where the deadly lingworm wakeneth in the desert of the sheep. Now we that come of the godkin of her reeds for ourselves we wot, but her will with the lives of menfolk, and their ending know we not. So therefore I bid thee not fear for thyself of doom and her deed, but for me, and I bid thee hearken to the helping of my need. Or else, art thou happy in life, or lusteth thou to die in the flower of thy days, when thy glory and thy longing bloom on high? The last chapter of the book, in which we are told of the great feast made for the dead, is so finely written that we cannot refrain from quoting this passage. Now was the gloaming falling upon the earth, but the hall was bright within, even as the hall sun had promised. Therein was set forth the treasure of the Wolfings. Fair cloths were hung on the walls, goodly broidered garments on the pillars. Goodly brazen cauldrons and fair carven chests were set down in nooks where men could see them well, and vessels of gold and silver were set all up and down the tables of the feast. The pillars also were wreathed with flowers, and flowers hung garlanded from the walls over the precious hangings. Sweet gums and spices were burning in fair-wrought censers of brass, and so many candles were alight under the roof that scarce had it looked more ablaze when the Romans had litten the faggots therein for its burning amidst the hurry of the morning battle. There then they fell to feasting, hallowing in the high tide of their return with victory in their hands, and the dead corpses of Theodulf and Otter, clad in precious glittering raiment, looked down on them from the high seat. And the kindreds worshipped them and were glad, and they drank the cup to them before any others, were they gods or men. In days of uncouth realism and unimaginative imitation, it is a high pleasure to welcome work of this kind. It is a work in which all lovers of literature cannot fail to delight. A tale of the House of the Wolfings and all the kindreds of the Mark, written in prose and in verse by William Morris, Reeves and Turner. End of Section 84. Mr. William Morris's last book.